A veteran insults Donald Trump in public. His stunning response shocks everyone. The auditorium was packed. Thousands of people had gathered to hear Donald Trump speak at a political rally. The air buzzed with excitement, a mixture of cheers and murmurs filling the vast space. Then, a man suddenly stood up in the middle of the crowd. He wasn't just another supporter or protester. He was a veteran. His name was David Carter, a retired U.S. Army soldier who had fought in Iraq. His posture was firm, but the wariness in his eyes told a story of struggle. He gripped a cane with his only remaining leg, his left leg lost to an IED explosion on the battlefield. A microphone was passed to him. His voice was deep, raw, and filled with frustration. "Mr. Trump, I have something to say to you, and I hope you have the courage to listen." The crowd stirred. Some murmured in curiosity, others tensed up, sensing the confrontation. Trump stood still, watching him with an unreadable expression. David didn't wait for permission to continue. His voice grew sharper. "I served this country. I bled for this country. And now that I'm back, I am treated like garbage. Do you have any idea what it's like to be a veteran in America today? I gave my leg for this nation. My friends gave their lives. And what do we get in return? A pathetic check that barely covers rent, long waiting times for medical care, broken promises." His voice rose with anger. "We fought your wars, Mr. Trump. We were sent overseas to defend this country, to protect its freedom, while you sat in your golden towers, making deals and dodging taxes." A few gasps rippled through the audience. Trump's supporters didn't like the attack, but David wasn't finished. "You sit there talking about how much you love America, but tell me this. Where was your love when veterans like me were sleeping on the streets? Where was your love when my friend, a fellow Marine, put a bullet in his head because he couldn't get the mental health care he needed?" The room fell dead silent. David took a step forward, his eyes locked onto Trump. "You say America is great. Well, let me tell you something, Mr. President. America isn't great when the people who fought for it are abandoned like stray dogs." The tension in the room was unbearable. Trump's security detail exchanged glances, unsure of whether they should intervene. But Trump, he didn't flinch. He stood firm, watching the veteran with a serious expression. Then, slowly, he lifted the microphone. And what he said next shocked everyone. Donald Trump took a deep breath. He didn't lash out. He didn't immediately defend himself. Instead, he did something unexpected. He nodded. "David, first and foremost, thank you. You are a hero. You and every veteran have made America strong. I know that life after war is tough. I won't pretend to fully understand your struggles, but I want you to know that I see you, and I hear you." David scoffed, shaking his head. "Do you? Do you really?" Trump raised a hand, signaling him to wait. His voice was calm but firm. "You're angry, and you have every right to be. But let me tell you something, David. You are not a victim. You are a warrior, and warriors don't give up." David's nostrils flared. "Easy for you to say. You've never had to fight for a meal." Trump's gaze remained steady. "You're right. I haven't fought in a war. I haven't made the sacrifices you have, and for that, I will never claim to understand your pain. But here's what I do understand." He pointed at David. "You, sir, have more strength in you than you realize, and I refuse to stand here and let you believe otherwise." The veteran's anger didn't fade, but he listened. Trump took a step forward. "Let me tell you about a man who had even fewer chances than you. A man born without arms or legs. A man who had no future, or at least, that's what people thought." The room remained still as Trump began his story. There was a boy, born with no arms, no legs. Imagine that. He couldn't walk. He couldn't hold anything at his hands, because he had none. His childhood was filled with struggle. People pitied him. Some even said he should have never been born. Trump paused, letting those words sink in. But did he let that define him? No. He decided that if he couldn't change his circumstances, he would change his mindset. He found strength within himself. He learned to swim, to paint, to inspire others. And do you know what he became? Trump scanned the room before answering his own question. He became a millionaire, a speaker who travels the world, touching the hearts of millions. A man who proved that limitations exist only in the mind. His name is Nick Vujicic, and if he can build an incredible life with no arms and no legs, then what excuse do the rest of us have? A murmur spread through the audience. Some nodded, some whispered to their neighbors. David sat in his seat, absorbing every word. Trump straightened his stance. His next words were measured, deliberate. "Now, let me be clear. This country does not forget its veterans. We allocate hundreds of billions of dollars every year to support those who have served. Housing, health care, education, job training. We do this because we owe you, because we honor you. But I don't want our veterans, our heroes, to live their lives depending solely on government support. I want you to live with purpose, with passion. I want you to find strength in yourselves, just like Nick Vujicic did. To all veterans across the nation and every citizen of the United States, if you are a patriot, then be one with all your heart, with every moment, until your last breath. Prove your patriotism by standing on your own feet, by taking care of yourselves, your children, and your parents without depending on anyone. That is one of the greatest ways to show your love for this country." He turned back to David, locking eyes with him. "David, I don't want you to leave here tonight feeling like a forgotten soldier. I want you to leave here knowing that you still have so much more to give to this world." David swallowed hard. He had expected a simple response, maybe a promise of more funding or a political platitude. But instead, he was given something greater, a challenge, a reminder of his own strength. And at that moment, something inside him shifted. The room, which had been so still, suddenly erupted into applause. Some people stood, clapping with vigor. Others wiped away a tear. David, still seated, clenched his jaw. He felt an unfamiliar but welcome surge of something he hadn't felt in years, a renewed sense of purpose. He slowly rose to his feet, and for the first time in a long time, he felt something deeper than just gratitude. He felt inspired. As he looked around the room, he saw others standing too. Fellow veterans, young men and women, all moved by the message they had just heard. Trump watched this unfold before him, then gave one final statement. America was built by those who never gave up. And as long as we have people like you, David, people who fight, who persevere, this country will always stand tall. The applause grew louder. It wasn't just for Trump, it was for David, for every veteran in the room, for every person who had ever faced hardship and refused to be defeated. And in that moment, it became clear. This was not just a speech. This was a turning point. That night, David went home and did something he hadn't done in years. He wrote down a new goal for himself. He no longer saw himself as a forgotten veteran, but as a man who still had something to offer, a man who could inspire, who could lead. And he realized, true strength isn't found in what we've lost, but in what we choose to do with what we have left. This story isn't just about one veteran, it's about all of us. We all face battles, some visible, some hidden. We all have moments where we feel lost. But in those moments, we must remember, life is not about what happens to us, but how we respond to it. Hardship does not define us, our actions do. And above all, the greatest power we have is the power to rise again. Because in the end, it's not about how much we are given, it's about what we make of it.